एक मिनट रुक जाओ, रेडी होने दो। चलो ये कर लेते हैं। This could be a great intro.
Hi, I'm Akshay.
Hi, this is Saurabh, and you are listening to the Founder Thesis podcast. We meet some of the most celebrated startup founders in the country.
And we want to learn how to build a unicorn. We're all aware of Gen Z fintech founders, people whose photos come with news articles announcing massive fundraisers. But I'm personally a lot more inspired by founders who started up in an era where the enabling factors of starting up were just not there. And today I'm talking to one such founder who is Mandar Agashe. Mandar is the founder of Sarvatra, which means everywhere. And Sarvatra is literally everywhere. It's powering the plumbing of our financial system. It's what enables the next gen payment companies like a Paytm or a Google Pay or a PhonePe to exist today. And Mandar started up way back in the 90s when even the word startup did not exist. He was starting a business, not a startup. And this is really a masterclass in the evolution of the payments and banking space in India. Listen on as Mandar talks about starting up when he was just a 20-something kid.
Within weeks of coming out of college, I started a software company. And at that time, I was exploring what to do. So a lot of my friends who had graduated, we started doing some brainstorming. But eventually, almost all of them went to US for a job. And but I focused on trying to create something. And of course, I was looking to create a product, software product. So that is what I was focused on. And once, of course, I had to learn the family business. So whenever I used to go to our sugar factory at that time was in near Akluz in Solapur district. So whenever I used to go there, I used to see that there was no ATMs there, no debit cards. There were lots of banks on the way I could see. But there was no ATM or debit card, or you had to carry cash with you. And if you want to spend something, it was always cash. And similarly, any of those guys, when they used to come to the city, they used to always, had to carry cash. So I just researched a little bit on that.
But this would have been much later, no? Or was it in 1990 only that you saw this problem?
No, I saw it at that time only.
Gotcha. Like when you started a software company in 1990, like did you start with some project in hand, some client, or you started with a with this idea only that you
So
want
at
to?
that time, it was thinking of how we can. In my family, there was a small bank, and there was no good software there. So I said, okay, can I try to computerize? At that time, it was all EDP departments and computerization and this and that. So the thought was, can we computerize the bank? And that's how we started little bit. I started tinkering with the whole thing and started going up the learning curve. And that went on for a couple of years while I was learning the family business. I was looking at that, and that's when I founded the software company.
Okay, so basically, first couple of years after graduating, you were involved in running the family business, and
Yeah.
as part of it, you were also involved in digitizing the cooperative bank that was owned by your family,
And
which is where
that's where I learned, okay, what is banking software, all those things I got to know. I was also trying to put ERP systems in my other businesses. So I was getting exposed to what products are available, what is not available. And it was a very initial phase. And I was running the pharma group of the company. So I was getting exposed to how the pharma industry works, and then I thought, okay, can I get into medical software? So I was exploring things. I was thinking what could be that big opportunity. In fact, one of my first softwares I did was for Tata Cancer Hospital. I did a cancer research software for them, and it was inaugurated by Mr. Ratan Tata himself. And he really liked what I was doing, and he said, keep on doing this. You are good at it. So the first encouragement I got was from Mr. Ratan Tata himself. And that was the journey.
So when did you full time get into software? Left the other family businesses and
So around, I would say, around 96, 97 is when I realized that this is a very big opportunity. And by that time, I was visiting my friends in US. When I used to travel, all my friends had gone into different companies, and the software industry was really, really growing. One of my uncles.
I think Infosys IPO had also happened, no, around that time.
I was not aware of it.
Yeah.
But,
Okay.
the thing is that then
No, that happened later.
then I went to US. One of my mamas, which is brother of my mom, used to work on mainframes in the US. So he took me to Comdex, which was one of the leading, what you can say, leading festival of of hardware and software and gadgets and so on and so forth. And there, the keynote speaker was Bill Gates. So we went all the way, drove down from LA to Las Vegas just to be at the complex so that I could hear Bill Gates speaking. And we reached late and the hall was closed. In front of that same hall was another keynote speech being given by a relatively unknown in India kind of a guy. And that keynote speak was given by a founder of a hardware company called Next, and that guy was
Okay.
Steve Jobs.
That is.
And
How do you say relatively unknown in India?
yeah, because at that time Bill Gates was very very popular, but and I actually got a demo of presentation keynote speech, and there was very few people in the hall. Everyone had gone to the big hall, and firsthand, I was exposed to the brilliance of Steve Jobs, and I could see, and there he showed the power of relational database. So he showed what can happen. NEXT actually was specializing in database of, and through graphics he showed how he could connect different databases, and that could lead to a complete revolution in this. And that's when it hit me that anything which is around database is going to be very very big. And he gave example of banks, make how you can do things like that, and eventually that thing was, I think, taken up by Oracle.
Tell me something like what was the scenario pre that time and post relational database you're saying is was a game changer.
Yeah,
Can you help me understand how, what was the situation before relational database and how did relational database become a game changer?
so it was like what you call big data is what it was in those days, right? Only mainframe had this entire big data, and then you had to put everything into that big data, and then you do research on it or do data crunching and all that, and that's why you required mainframes and whatever supercomputers and everything. But when the smaller computers came, it was a relational database that need to basis you can connect databases and do some search. Like as an example, you will have a database of only name and address, and then you'll have one more database of say name and age, and then you connect both, and you want to know all people with this age staying in this pin code. Then you could connect two databases, and that's what Steve Jobs actually showed on screen. Just by drawing a graphical line between these two databases, now you could search across both, and it like blew my mind. Like I said, wow, this is going to be that big game changer. And,
So pre-relational databases did not talk to each other, or they talk to each
no,
other only in a mainframe environment and not on a personal
um,
computer.
no, the initial relational databases were there, but the power. See, what Steve Jobs is a dreamer, right? There were smartphones before that also, but what he could do with smartphone, music players were there now, but what MP3 were there, they were getting, but MP3 player, no one could imagine. He had the power to make complex things simple. And that's what actually happened. Otherwise, the jargon was always there, databases were there, RDBase. I learned in my engineering also, so everything was there. But I could see the power of what can happen, and that's what kind of inspired me. Okay, I have to be in banking software, kind of, because that's where the real thing is happening. And that and around the same time, one of my college friends, he came back to India. He was expert in Oracle. So we met after a long time, and we got chatting and all that. And so he said, I had done enough of this, being in the service industry, working for multinationals. uh, it's, there's no fun in it. Finally, you are just a clog in the wheel. So I said, I'm thinking of creating a product company. And he said, I want to work on a product. That's when kind of we created the standalone software company. And I started on that. And started recruiting. So from 96 to around 2000, we worked on, creating the basic product. And around
The
2000,
focus was a product for banks.
product for banks. And around 2000 to 2001 is when I had a chance meeting with CEO of iFlex, Mr. Deepak Esas. And he liked, the product that we had done. And he said, iFlex and Flexcube and our product Bank Easy, we should work together. And iFlex invested into the company. And that was my first professional investment. He came on board, and he's still on the board after 20 years.
Wow. So, but in this, you had not yet gone to market like 2000, 2001 when
No,
iFlex came in.
we were experimenting with known banks. So we had about 20 banks already on the platform by that time. But they were all friends or known people. But we had not really like gone to the market as such. It was still experimenting in and around Pune city and Solapur and our catchment area.
Mm-hmm. So, tell me about your how did revenue start? Like, how did you actually get your first sale? And how did a software product became a business?
So in those days, there was a simple revenue model. You sell the software for a certain price, and you have a AMC. That was a standard model. So in fact, I remember when I first went to pitch for the software to a village where the head office of that rural cooperative bank was, and almost half of the village had gathered there. So I said, I thought there was some function or something. When I went there, they said, no, no, that's all I've come to see the computer, because they came to know that I'm going to bring a computer to show the demo. I carried a computer, and that was the first PC to enter that village. So that crowd had come only to see the PC. Then when I said, okay, this much for the hardware and this much for the software, so that board said, "Arey, you are giving a TV and everything in that price, and only for that one chakti of software." They didn't know software, only for that pay word. Flash drive, pe tha na, not flash drive. I don't, that disk used to be there, na. So that actually you are charging same as this TV and everything. The hardware, software. Then we realize, okay, you have to give a combined product, and you have to also, there's no electricity for hours. You have to also sell UPS to them, and the battery.
Acha.
It was an entire package.
Why did you choose these banks? Why not choose metro-based banks? Like you made your software for any bank, or you made it for cooperative banks?
No, we went into the known banks, and they were all cooperative banks. And the large banks already had hardware and software from big companies and big, you know, there was nothing, no market to go to an SBI or, like we are a startup. Now, so we went to those banks who there was no software. Naturally, we went there for. And that's how we slowly started, what you can say, giving that. And then what happened is that I realized that even after all that, there is no connectivity in rural India. So I said, what's the point in giving a core banking system when there is no connectivity only? That's when we started again the phase two of the company of how we can create a point of sale based, today what you call micro ATM, that you can withdraw cash, you can do your balance inquiry and all that. But I looked at it as a CBS terminal. So I said, because that POS machine could dial in on a copper line. There was no mobile also, by the way, at that time. So it was a POS machine which could dial over a copper line, connect to the central server, and do a transaction. So it was a core banking system made for rural India. And to create that, to create the switch. And what is like today the whole payment infrastructure, and it's so common words. At that time, it was nothing. It was just how do we make it happen? How do you make the customer's account portable was the challenge. Because the account was only stuck in that branch. Even the other branch,
Okay.
that customer, that he belongs to the same bank. If he carries a checkbook, only he was known. No?
So tell me something. What was the rural cooperative banking industry like at that time, like early 2000s, when you were
Same,
going and
same
selling to
as,
them?
same as today. That way, it was basically around.
Like, how big is that market? Because, sitting in
There
a
are,
city, I
yeah,
think of only ICICI, SBI when I think of banks. So I don't know, is that a big market, the rural
also
cooperative
number
bank?
of banks. Yes, if you see that there are total at that time 2,000 banks in India. Out of that, 53 banks had a debit card, which were all urban banks. The rest did not have a debit card. They were the small cooperative banks. So number of banks was huge. The number of customers they were servicing was huge. Because 70% of India lives in villages. So they were the last mile for them. And most surprisingly, all of them are called urban banks. They are called the urban cooperative banks. So many people in Mumbai said, why are they called urban cooperative banks when they are in rural India? I said, because you are looking the other way. For a villager, he has to come to Taluka place, which is urban for him, and there's no bank in his area. So he comes to urban area and he comes to the Taluka place, and it's an urban cooperative bank. So it's an urban bank for him because he stays even deeper rural. So that's why they are called the urban cooperative banks. Not, and actually they're in rural India servicing that. So, but I found that they were very, what you can say, um very innovative. Each cooperative bank had its own specialization. They are like the community banks of the US. Like US has a similar community banks. There are 15,000 community banks in the US. Again, very similar to Indian cooperative banks. There are similar.
Is there a separate RBI statute under which they get formed and all? Like, because I know RBI doesn't give banking licenses easily, and I mean,
You are
so
asking in
so
India or in the US?
in India.
No, so India same like US. So basically, the this beginning of all this is in an institution called the credit societies. So credit societies where some group of people come together and they create a financial institution. It's called the credit society. In US, it is called the credit union. So there were credit unions started in India by cotton farmers, by different people, or say employees of steel factory. They start a credit union, and that is how it started. And as those credit societies became very large, RBI gave them a license to operate. For example, Cosmos Credit Society, Saraswat Credit Society became Cosmos Bank and Saraswat Bank.
If you like to hear stories of founders, then we have tons of great stories from entrepreneurs who have built billion-dollar businesses. Just search for the Founder Thesis podcast on any audio streaming app like Spotify, Gaana, Apple Podcasts, and subscribe to the show.
Okay.
So you had to first be a credit society and then you became a bank. But then there was no bank to service this rural industry, and it wasn't affordable for large banks in the urban city to go there. That's when these cooperative banks started emerging across the country. And then for every district, NABARD came out with a district central cooperative bank for disbursal of loans, agricultural loans. So that became another large institution of its own, controlled by NABARD, which still exists today. So everywhere in the world, there are only two types of banks. There are either large banks, private sector banks, and there are cooperative banks. Every big country. You find it in Japan also, you find it in Germany also. India has a third bank called the Agri Bank. And there were similar agri banks in China, which got merged and they became the Agricultural Bank of China. So, so that's why we have such a beautiful system, financial system in India. And then banks had checkbooks and credit societies didn't have checkbooks. That was the only difference. Otherwise, they're exactly same.
And it was relatively easy for a credit society to become a bank because, I mean, if there are 1900 of them, then it
They had
would not have
certain
been
rules
very
that
difficult.
if you achieve so much of what you can say accounting standards, you have a certain kind of a board, you have so much a deposit. The rules kept on changing every 10 years. But, prima facie, once you become a certain size, you can apply for a bank. Then you become a certain level of a cooperative bank, then you can apply for a scheduled cooperative bank. So then when you have become a scheduled bank, you can do more business, you can do forex, you can open branches wherever you want. Earlier, these were like a local area banks. These cooperative banks could operate only in that taluka. They cannot go beyond that taluka. Such restrictions were there. Or operating hours restrictions were there. They couldn't give all the products that an SBI could give. They could only give restricted products. So that is how we learned a lot, and a lot of those knowledge got captured when we went to these 30 different cooperative banks. We went with different cooperative banks. Somewhere merchant cooperative banks, somewhere agriculture producers cooperative banks, somewhere say milk cooperative bank. Somebody who works in the milk industry. So each one had say 70% banking was similar, but 30% was unique to that community. That's why it's called community banking. So it is that community coming together.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why they have only certain kind of products which is helpful to that community only.
Mm-hmm. And till the early 2000s, they were working on paper.
Yeah. Why up to 2000? I would say up to 2010. Most of them were not computerized fully. Once the telecom network improved and the cost of the hardware came down, and the electricity improved, and the battery life improved, and the cost of the hardware as well as the storage reduced, that's when computerization increased. So the intention of computerization was there throughout, and also because there were lots of these BCS courses and so many computer courses which opened up in small towns. So there were also people available to run those computerization. No? So everything, the whole ecosystem developed over 10, 20 years.
So you were in the right place at the right time when this industry was at that stage where computerization was inevitable, and you were probably the only one offering it, or are there other people also like your
There were
peers who
no,
also were there?
there were many of them. Means I would say each one then got about 50 banks and stayed with it. So there are like 70. There were 70 companies like ours in India at that time. Every state had its own small software company, product company, giving a similar computerization product. So that is when in 2010, when I changed gears of Sarvatra completely, where I said I can't do the same thing and I'll be nobody. I need to get
One quick question before you talk of changing gears. By 2010, what was the scale? How many employees? What revenue were you doing?
So
Like,
we were
yeah.
about 30 to 40 employees. We were doing about 2 3 crore rupees of turnover, and we had about 40 banks. And that was a straight of all the companies. Everyone had that similar. A bigger one would probably have, say, the biggest at that time was Infrasoft with 200 banks and probably 70 80 crores of turnover. But otherwise, सब छोटे-छोटे थे. And then there was this Flexcube and Finacle, which were global companies.
Which were more for like these metro-based banks like
Metro, that
ICICI.
also Finacle and all were there. Flexcube was only global. So having an investment from Flexcube did help us understand, the software, how to view yourself, how to organize yourself, how to get the whole professional. Coming from a family business, you are not used to many things, because you are always the boss ka son, so you always get treated differently. When you are a professional CEO, you have to start behaving differently. uh, and like you have to have quarterly outlook, so many things which I got to learn under guidance of iFlex team, and that helped us to think big also with more confidence. And around 2010, when actually I went to bring the CBS to Roll India through the POS terminals, that's when it hit upon me, oh, this whole switching and debit card and all is a very big opportunity. So that's when we applied to RBI, and that's when NPCI got formed, and we became the first ASP to be allowed to issue debit cards to our banks. So then we shifted completely into switching, and we partnered with the 70 small companies who are doing core banking systems, and we gave this as an add-on module to their product.
So what does that mean? I thought debit cards are issued by like RuPay or Visa or Mastercard.
No,
What do you
RuPay,
mean when you say you got permission to issue debit card?
so we got permission to issue RuPay debit card. So if any bank
Okay.
wanted to issue RuPay debit card, they needed a platform. So we were the platform which enabled that bank to issue debit cards,
Okay.
RuPay debit cards.
Okay. So RuPay has like multiple people who are issuing RuPay debit cards, like multiple private companies who issue RuPay debit cards on behalf of
So the issuer is
banks.
always the bank. We are only running the switch. We are the technology service provider.
Okay.
So that's it started. We started issuing, so we had a 30 40 banks base to which we started giving the debit cards, and that gave,
So how did your revenue model change? Because pre
so
this, your
revenue
revenue model
model.
would have been like a one-time payment for hardware, software, and then a AMC, I
Correct.
guess.
So from there we shifted to a transaction based model.
Okay.
So from there, because
Like
there was
a
no hardware,
percentage of every
because there is
transaction.
no hardware software to sell, it was all hosted. So it was a hosted system, hosted switch, and any of the banks could become partnered with us, and they started issuing their cards. So then the model obviously became the payment industry model, which is a transaction based model.
Like for every withdrawal or every debit card transaction, there would be some small percentage that you would earn.
Correct. So that is what the transaction model happened. Because hardware and all was a one-time investment for us. Banks did not have to invest anything. They had to buy their own ATMs and all that. That was up to them. But there were so many already established ATMs of large banks. So these corporate banks could just issue a debit card which their customers could use an ICICI or HDFC ATM.
Yeah.
So it was a complete different business. And that's when I got investment from ICICI Bank.
Okay. So you said that NPCI was formed in 2010, right? Like
2010, 2011 is when the RuPay got launched, and we got the permission.
So tell me about NPCI and Rupee and like that from a understanding how the business environment was evolving. Like if you could help me understand that also. Like what was it pre NPCI and what all did
So
NPCI do?
before NPCI, example, all banks were into called bilateral treaties. So if HDFC Bank wanted their customer to use ICICI Bank ATM, then it was a direct tie between these two banks. So each bank had a tie with multiple banks, and then they would do a end of the day settlement with each other, etc., etc. So then only these top 50 banks were working with each other. So when we had put the switches in the cooperative banks, we gave a presentation initially to HDFC Bank at a what you can say. I could give presentation to Mr. Aditya Puri at that time, and he really liked what we were doing. And he said, yes, definitely, HDFC Bank would like to. They had a huge correspondence banking business with many cooperative banks. So they would like to extend, their ATM network to their partner banks, and then their partner banks could not afford to put their own switch and everything. So Sarvatra became a good company to give them as a service platform as a service, and then they could work with HDFC. So that is what our initial thought was. But then since NPCI got formed, RBI then said that now no longer bilateral types. You have to all tie up with NPCI, and that became the central switch. So pre NPCI and post NPCI, that was a big change. And then once we connected to NPCI, we didn't have to go and talk to each and every bank individually. Then that became the central authority.
Hmm. Okay. So what is the switch that you're talking about? Help me understand that.
Every bank has got two core platforms. All the branches usually connect to what you call the core banking system, where the whole accounting and everything happens. And all their ATM, POS terminals, debit cards, they go to the switch, electronic financial transaction switch, EFT switch, and that connects to the CBS.
So what is switch? Is it like a server?
It is a software. It's a combination of software and hardware. So it redirects the transaction. So, for example, every debit card or credit card, the first 6 digits it's called the BIN. It's identifier of the bank identity number, BIN. So, when suppose you are having a card of HDFC Bank and you go to an ICICI Bank ATM, and you put the card inside that ATM. The ATM will first take that data and send it to a switch of ICICI Bank. So all ATMs of ICICI Bank connected to the switch. So what does the switch do? It checks what are the numbers, and based on that, it knows, oh, it is a HDFC Bank card. So it will route or switch the transaction to NPCI. NPCI will redirect again. There's a switch inside NPCI called a National Financial Switch. That switch will redirect it to HDFC Bank because it's a HDFC Bank card. HDFC Bank, where it will receive that data on its switch. That switch will send that data to the core banking, saying that the first switch will see whether the card is valid, expiry date is there, the PIN is correct, whatever XYZ. And then it will just, agar say you are withdrawing 5,000 bucks, it will check in your account money is there or not. If yes, it is there, then it will CPS will tell the switch, yes, everything is okay, good to go. HDFC Bank switch will send a instruction back to NFS. NFS will switch it back to ICICI switch. ICICI switch will tell the ATM, please give 5,000 bucks if you have the money. All this happens in few seconds. The actual money comes out. And then end of the day, NPCI and NFS will say, oh, so many customers ICICI went to HDFC, so many customers HDFC went to ICICI, and they will reconcile and say who has to pay whom. And the end of the day, settlement happens.
So this sounds a lot like APIs, right? Like what today API?
No,
like it sounds like
API is totally different. API is for application. Switching is like core infrastructure.
Okay. But APIs also allow different databases to talk to each other, right? Like
No,
this is
API
essentially that only. No? They're
no.
different databases talking to each other.
No, these are not databases. These are switches talking to each other. These are bank switches. The core banking will have its own database. That is, so API is very different. API is for your applications to connect to other applications or database. That's very different from switching. Switching is mainly it drives the ATM, drives the machine, POS machine. It drives the mobile app if it's connecting to it.
So switching is more at the infrastructure level, and API is more at the application level.
Correct.
Got it.
So switch is also an application.
Okay. So once you got the NPCI license to issue RUPay, that is when you were telling me about the next fundraise.
Yeah, so that's when we got a fundraise from ICICI Bank to expand and do more of what we're doing.
So then tell me the progression from there. So then instead of being one of many core banking software companies, you then became a
India's first switching company for cooperative banks. And that's when HDFC Bank, ICICI Bank, and then at that time, Yes Bank, Axis Bank, all of them partnered with us to sell the switch to their correspondent banking banks.
What is a correspondent banking bank?
So the small cooperative banks who are limited to do only certain functionality, no? So if their customers want to give a letter of credit or want to give a demand draft or any of the other services, so they tie up with some large bank. That is called correspondence banking. So then they introduce us to all their correspondent banks, saying that अरे आप ये ले लो तो आपको debit card हो सकता है, आप so many things you can do, and that's how that whole ICICI Bank investment helped us really grow from just a small company with 30 banks.
What was what was in it for, say, a Yes Bank to introduce you? Would they earn something from that? Like if you
No, that strengthens their relationship with their correspondence bank, and the Yes Bank sponsors that bank. So the bin has to be sponsored. So that cooperative bank did not have a bin. So HDFC Bank, they had to sponsor that bin. So then when they sponsor the bin, the relationship improves.
And how did the revenues progress from there? So 2010, you told me about 2 CR revenue you were doing. So how did that progress then?
So, example, we can talk about gross transaction value. So initially it was just a 2 crore kind of a revenue. And then 2010, we started the first transaction. So probably the first month we did about 100, 200 rupees worth of gross transaction value. The GTV
What is gross transaction value? Like the total rupee amount that was
gets transacted on your switch using your switch. Withdrawn or deposits or transferred or whatever. Every type
and your revenue would be like some 0.0% of something, like 0.0
correct. It
something.
will vary from switch to switch and market to market. So like that, we started few $1,000, then we went to $10,000, and then we reached 1 lakh in a month, and like that 1 crore in a month. And number of transactions also grew very rapidly. So there was a time when the target was to hit something like 1 lakh transactions in a year. And then it kept on growing, and then new products got introduced by NPCI called IMPS. Then AEPS came.
When was IMPS introduced?
I think 2012-13, around that time sometime. I don't remember the exact year, but around that time. And then came AEPS, then came UPI.
What is AEPS? Like IMPS, I know is like instant money transfer. So first there was the NEFT system, no, in which there was like hourly
Correct.
system.
Correct. So there was RTGS, NEFT, then came IMPS, and then came AEPS. AEPS is Aadhaar enabled payment.
Which is UPI basically, like AEPS.
No, AEPS is Aadhaar based. That instead of card plus PIN, you have Aadhaar number plus your fingerprint.
And whichever bank account is linked to that Aadhaar number, that is the bank account which gets used. Okay.
And then came the blockbuster UPI. And then the entire game changed. Around that time is when ICICI Bank became our customer. So they saw we are doing good. When we crossed the first 50 banks who came on our switch, ICICI Bank really liked the progress. They didn't expect us to go to from 0 to 50 in terms of debit cards so fast. And then they liked what we were doing, and then we got an opportunity to give a similar product for their rural customers. And that's how we slowly started growing into ICICI Bank. Then we created the MPS switch for ICICI and AEPS and UPI. And now all their alternative banking platforms are Sarvatra platforms. And as I said, our goal was to do initially 1 lakh transactions a year. Then it was 1 crore a year.
I want to understand this ICICI deal a little better. So ICICI already had all of the infrastructure in place, right? Like what did they need Sarvatra for? They already had like the switches.
No, they had earlier switches no, for ATMs and POS and all that. With the new generation switches of IMPS and AEPS and UPI, we were the first ones to do it.
And so the entire IMPS system of ICICI Bank runs on Sarvatra?
Yeah, ICICI, IDBI, and so many banks. So 250 more banks.
Wow. Okay. Okay.
And our debit card platform is now in across 600 banks.
Wow. Okay. 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 And so when did you hit like 1 crore transactions annual? Like by which year did you reach that?
So after, I would say after first 6 years.
So about 2016, 17, somewhere
2016,
around.
17, and then the demonetization happened. And then boom, then everything changed for the country. After demonetization, till demonetization, we were going to banks to sell our product, and then reverse happened. After demonetization, every bank was after us. Ki, please give us the product, digital product, debit cards, and that. It was amazing. And then that was, I would say, the real exponential growth of the digital part of the country started after demon. And immediately it was followed by growth in UPI and this whole Jandhan and Aadhaar. And like it was from 2016 to 2021, in 5 years, probably we grew 10 times.
So what do you do currently? Like annual
So from
gross
1
transaction
crore,
value or?
so 1 crore transactions per year, say, now we do close to 5 crore transactions a day.
Wow.
And
And you also provide switches for UPI. So
yeah, 100 banks or more than 50% of the banks in UPI are on our platform. And then we also started giving UPI connectors to the PSP apps. So Google Pay, WhatsApp Pay, Paytm, all of them use Sarvatra platform.
what is PSP app? PSP, what does that term mean?
Payment service provider, PSP. So, like example, earlier you are a bank or the issuer, or you are an acquirer bank. So two banks. Either you are a issuer bank or you are acquiring bank, and money was always transferred from one to another.
What is the issuer bank and what is the acquirer bank?
Issuer banks means that guy who issues the card is issuer bank, and the guy who has installed the ATM is called the acquiring bank. So you acquire the transaction and you issue the card. So you are an acquirer. And then with UPI, that whole concept came like a third party app, which is not a bank, can also create a payment platform. Otherwise, you only would have an ICICI Bank mobile banking app, HDFC Bank mobile banking app. The private apps started coming in after RBI thought of this and NPCI introduced UPI. And it was like a game changer completely. In fact, all the global Federal Reserves and Reserve Banks come to India to study our payment system. We get so many inquiries from global banks, from developing countries, to just come and study what India has done. Like even Google CEO said that Federal Reserve is trying to come out with a system in 2022 to 24 called FedNow. So Google CEO has gone on record to say that Federal Reserve should visit India and study NPCI and UPI. Which is like a fantastic thing for a country. First time a Indian product is being like looked at like global. People are studying. Otherwise, we are always studying. Are udhar kya acha hai, idhar kya acha hai. First time a Indian product is studied by global people.
So, and what is the kind of revenues that you do? Like,
I can tell you GTV last year we did a GT of $10 billion or 75,000 crores.
wow,
And we are growing at 30 to 50% year on year.
amazing. Okay, so your revenue would be like 0.0 something percentage of that
I can't
GTV,
disclose that.
but roughly like in that range,
I
somewhere
would
in that
say
range.
it's very small, but still satisfactory and we are profitable.
Yeah, because the base is so massive. And is the payout different for different like IMPS, UPI, and
Yeah,
uh, debit card transaction? And
yes, of course.
so what is the hierarchy like? Which is the
No,
costliest, like highest transaction, and which is the lowest? Obviously, UPI would be the lowest, I'm
yeah,
assuming.
credit card transactions are the highest, MDR you get highest, and UPI is the lowest.
Who foots the bill for this? Like when there's a UPI transaction?
The bank does it because the whole idea of that is that though you may not get money for the transaction, the merchant will keep that much balance with the bank. So bank enjoys the current account float.
Which bank? The bank of
Who are-
the customer making the payment or receiving?
Both, no? Means like you will have some customers who are paying, so you have to keep money in the account so that you can use the system. No? So, like example, we had done a study for a small cooperative bank that before we gave them debit card platform, when salary was deposited in the bank, next day there was a huge queue and people used to withdraw the money and go home. Once we gave a debit card, people stopped taking the money away because they know anytime they can go and take it. So that float, which was 50 lakh rupees, went to 9 crore rupees for that one small bank in rural India. So just imagine what UPI must have done to large banks. Because unless you have money in that UPI account, you will not be able to use UPI. And unless if you're a merchant, if you're getting paid by UPI, the money will come into the same account of the bank. No? So it's a game of the float.
Help me understand this float concept better. So when you say like float went from 50 lakhs to 9 crore, how did that happen? What does it mean? Like,
So, for example, suppose you have a salary account in a cooperative bank, okay, and you are getting say 50,000 rupees salary. Correct. Normally, you will, if you didn't have a debit card or anything, you would go and withdraw 25, 30,000 because you will need it over the month.
okay, so that money is not with the
Correct.
bank
But
now. It's
now
in my pocket.
it's gone away. Huh? It's gone away no, from the bank. But now, once you given a debit card, the person says, "No, let it be in the bank. No, I can go to an ATM anytime, or as I need, I'll use it." So then the money remains in the bank, which is a low cost deposit for the bank. No? So same way, if you are having a say UPI connected to your account, you'll say, "अरे, एक 5-10 हजार रख दो ना account में, then only you can use that UPI somewhere. No? Otherwise, you'll withdraw the cash and use cash everywhere.
Right, right. So yeah, with UPI, you don't even feel that you need more than 1,000, 2,000 rupees with you because UPI is accepted everywhere. So
Right. So now you know when you're 5-10 रुपए देना है करने तो earlier you would have some money in your pocket, but that money is lying dead in your pocket. No? It's not earning you any interest also, nor is it of any use to the bank also. But the service has been done.
Right.
And plus, there are so many things that the RBI has to print, and and the cost of economy it doesn't work.
Fascinating. So, like I don't know if this is something which you would like to answer, but I would love to understand more about NPCI and what kind of, I mean, the evolution of NPCI. Did NPCI, what was the reason behind UPI launch? What did they see as the problem? And because, I mean,
No,
obviously,
so no, so basically, initially NPCI started off by running a national financial switch, correct?
hmm. And whose brainchild was NPCI? Like, what?
No, NPCI was formed by all banks put together. They all put money and created NPCI.
Okay, so this was not a government initiative. It was like a
No. It was all banks, IBA. In fact, the first office of NPCI was in IBA office in Brabant Stadium,
IBA is what, like Indian Banking Association or
Indian
something.
Bank Association. And they created NPCI. Of course, with the blessings of RBI and full support of RBI. Then the whole idea was to make the country independent, to have a payment system of our own. So that was the goal.
So NPCI
Like
is like a
to create,
for-profit corporation. It's not
no,
a.
it's a not for profit
It's a
organization.
not-for-profit. Okay.
Section
Okay.
25, I think.
Okay.
So
Okay.
their
Okay.
goal was to see what was the need, what was the what you can say identified need of the country when you have if you have to grow the GDP, you need a robust like it's part of the key infrastructure, right? Banks, you need banks and branches. You need digital infrastructure. You need so many debit cards, credit card, POS terminals. So started off that okay, खुद का card system चाहिए, which is independent of everyone.
Which
Like
would
how we
possibly
have our
save
own
costs also for the bank. Like the banks would be paying higher
cost,
money to Visa, Mastercard, so they wanted their own
or
system.
rather it was looked at Visa, Mastercard. May when you pay, your money is going out of the country. Why can't we have our own? You know, like we have our own banks, we have our own things. Why not have our own debit card, credit card network?
Hmm. But I mean, banks are like for-profit bodies. Now there must have been a profit motive for everything that they did. Like,
Yeah, of course, there was cost saving and everything. Of course, that was cost saving. But even if they had to pay cost, at least the money remained in India, was the thought. And most importantly, you have control over your own destiny, your own data, your own whatever. That was the self sufficient as a country. And in that comes in Sarvatra, which is, digitize India. And around that time, I got investment before ICICI Bank. I got investment from a very key investor. So I got investment from Mr. Vallabh Bansali.
who is that? I have not heard the name.
Vallabh Bansali is chairman of INAM.
Yeah, what is inams? I'm sorry, I
INAM.
don't know these things.
Okay, so Vallabh Bansali is, I would say, the most pioneer investor in the country. He is the person who funded Infosys, the first IPO. So when he was the investment banker for them, and when so he could see the like Infosys becoming the need of the hour for the country, having our own IT. So he was the guy who invested in these what you can say today's huge companies. So he pioneered investing in many such firms. The list is endless,
Okay, okay.
but very low profile. That even like you, I had not even heard of him when I met him.
Right.
But his goal and my goal matched that we wanted to do something for the country to digitize India, and me being a product company when all my other what can say friends and colleagues were into services, I was into product, and so he liked all that, and he kind of also supported us not only financially but also giving the management guidance,
Mentorship.
mentorship, and and today is the chairman of Sarvatra Technologies, and she has been a huge guiding light for us, and you know, and I would say he is a stalwart of the finance industry in India.
So Enam is like a investment bank.
Yeah, it was the topmost investment bank in the country. So if you see all the pioneering companies, you will see their investment banker was always in different fields, so not only software, whether it's software or entertainment or banks or just name it. And so that, see, it was, now I look back, I think it was quite a brave effort to when to just focus on giving a products in India, being a product company in India. Like when I look back, I would think that, I didn't, there was no so much analysis or internet or the thing so much, but it was just what felt right we did. And that is still our mantra. We'll do what is right. And when I was told, "Arey, there is some protocol IMPS," nobody knew what was IMPS. So I said, "Yeah, we have to do it. It sounds great." And NPCI just kept on coming out with these great products. Like now, the new product that we feel will be very very big is Bharat Bill Payment System (BBPS), which is superb, where you can all types of bill payments you can do. So combination of UPI, BBPS, AEPS. Example, in this COVID lockdown, the star product, everyone thinks it's UPI. Correct? But UPI, of course, is a star product. But a real, what you can say, star product of NPCI is AEPS, where when the urban poor or urban labor suddenly went back to their villages, they found themselves with money in a large bank where their saving account was there in the city, but no branches around and no way to access it. They didn't even have a debit card, but they could go to a business correspondent and put the Aadhaar number and withdraw cash just using their fingerprint. No debit card. And I saw transactions go up from like 2 lakhs a day to 60, 70 lakhs a day. If AEPS system was not there, I wonder what would have happened to those guys. When there was no way to walk to an ATM, banks used micro ATM and went to societies and gave people money.
Mm-hmm. So tell me about the concept of a micro ATM.
So micro ATM is nothing but an ATM, but instead of actual cash coming out of the dispenser, a person carries cash and whatever is the slip पे जो amount है उतना cash वो दे देता है. So micro ATM is exactly ATM. Whatever you can do on ATM, it happens on the micro ATM, other than the cash dispense.
So he has like a mobile app which is used for
Mobile app or mobile POS terminal, point of sale terminal, mobile POS terminal. So he comes to you and you say, "Oh, I want to deposit $2,000." So then you put your debit card inside, put your PIN, put the amount, and the slip comes out. Yes, now you can deposit 2,000. You give 2,000 to that guy, business correspondent. Or similarly, you can withdraw 2,000, or you can check your balance, or you can check your mini statement. Whatever you can do at an ATM, you can do there. Other than the so ATM is automated teller system, right? Here is what you can say a assisted teller, a person coming to you. And because of mobile, it is portable.
and this is
So
also
because
a
of
unique Indian innovation, or is it a global concept?
see, POS, merchant POS are there globally, but using that merchant POS as a micro ATM is quite unique in the country.
And who are the companies who run these micro ATMs? Is it run by banks only, like ICICI would
Banks
be?
and their business correspondents. So RBI created something called a business correspondent, which are associated with every bank. So where branch is not there, a business correspondent is there.
And are there private companies also that run these micro ATMs?
Yeah. So business correspondents are all private companies.
Okay, so but these would be like mom and pop entrepreneurs, like not
No, no,
not
no.
large companies.
No, large company like Sarvatra is a business correspondent. Like that, there are many
So
top class business
what
correspondents.
is this business model? If you can help me understand, like
It's the same transaction based, no difference, but you are only doing the last mile.
so a business correspondent company would be a company that would have, let's say, these micro entrepreneurs who are carrying around POS machines, or they install POS machine in their shop.
Or not necessarily, or it could be a company like Sarvatra who says, okay, in our branches of our corporate banks, we'll set up a micro ATM. So, so it may not be only mom and pop person.
And these companies would
But all telecom guys, telecom guys are doing business correspondence.
Acha, so an Airtel store would also have a POS machine like Airtel.
Correct,
Okay, okay. So
correct,
Airtel would also be running a correspondence
correct.
business. Okay,
All medical outlets are doing it. Chains of medical outlets.
there's like a additional source of revenue for anyone with a retail presence, like who has a large rural retail presence. They can take this up as an
Yeah,
additional source of revenue.
yeah. Or there are credit societies who do it as an additional business.
And for this, you have
So
to tie up with one bank, or again, is there like a centralized license, banking correspondent
no,
license?
no, it's multiple banks you can type.
Okay. So, how many banks have you tied up with for your correspondence
No,
business?
we are doing it only with one bank right now for a particular set of uh, customers.
Hmm, got it. Okay. So, what is there were a couple of more questions I wanted to ask on NPCI. I wanted to understand, like you told me, the thought behind the Rupee system. What was the thought behind UPI, and how did that come about? And
So it was a natural evolution where now that it's like once you get used to like how you got used to a basic smartphone, then you wanted apps on the smartphone, and then you wanted a camera on the smartphone, and you want a video on the smartphone, then you want a music player on the smartphone. So it is natural for that after you have a debit card, can you have a mobile based app to do transactions? Then naturally, can you use that mobile banking app to do person to person fund transfer? And then can you also use it to pay for in the shop? Why carry a debit card? So it, that kind of innovation was bound to happen. So UPI was obviously in that thing the best possible thing. And NPCI went a step further that why have only banks run apps? Why not allow private players like Google and ATM also come with apps?
and
It was
UPI, there would also have been a profit motive for banks, like to support UPI. Like, did it reduce their transaction costs?
no, it is a new set of transactions that got opened. No? Like for person to person transfer, you had to know the bank account of that other person. Here you can just get his virtual private address and transfer the funds. So it was convenience, ease of use, and with WhatsApp being there everywhere, so it Facebook, WhatsApp. So because of that, smartphones were there everywhere. So the app culture had started. For a product like UPI to emerge, first the app culture has to come. No?
Okay. And Beam is by NPCI, or like?
That's their own app of the government. Beam. Like you have Google Pay, Paytm, there's Beam app.
But Beam is not like a government app; it's an NPCI app.
I'm not sure who owns it. Could be the government also. It was a representative of what's to come. So then the other private players could see it and say, oh, we can also develop. or banks could.
So
Like
Beam
that.
was like Google's. Google had that line of phones, Nexus, where the goal was just to show hardware companies on what they could do with Google Android.
I'm not sure about what was that. I think they bought Motorola with a different purpose.
Right. Yeah. And what is Bharat Bill Pay system? If you can talk about that, like you're saying, it's the next big disruption. So
Yeah.
what is it
So
exactly? Like,
it's like all billers in India are available under one roof. Like how National Financial Switch, all ATMs got connected to one single thing. Similarly, now all billers in India, all electricity board companies, all telecom companies, all your DTH, everything is under that one. So once you are, say, a bank introduces a Bharat bill payment, their customers can pay bill of anything,
and
electricity
how
or
would the
DTH. Or,
identification happen? Like, if I pay my electricity bill, how will the electricity company know who I am? Like, is there an Aadhaar based identification? Or
no, there you actually pay in real time. No? So consumer ID you have to give.
no,
No?
I mean, okay. So, but then you need to remember consumer ID of all of these.
Like example, you go to a biller's outlet, you go to electricity board outlet, you give your consumer ID and you pay. You pay for yourself or your friend, it doesn't matter to them. As long as you're paying for a certain consumer ID, whatever is the pending bill, you pay. So it's that way it's same. Only it's a combination of all billers under one. So if you are staying in Kerala and you are shifted from UP there and you want to pay bill of your residence in UP of electricity board, you can pay in Kerala. You don't have to transfer money to somebody relative and ask him to go to UP state electricity board and pay there. I think the connection was lost.
Okay. So right now also you can pay online, right? Like most of these electricity companies have a system to pay online, and even bank apps, like through the ICICI bank app I can pay. So this is just like an
But
aggregator
when
for
you pay
that, like.
online, no, 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 when you pay on ICICI today to their bill payment system, you will see the Bharat Bill Pay logo there. So the platform behind is Bharat Bill Pay. So you can see a BBPS logo there.
And is this also
So
bringing online companies who are not
earlier
currently offering online?
ICICI would earlier ICICI would need to type with many billers, example. Instead of that, now they connect to Bharat Bill Payment and now all billers are there.
Okay. So this is again that same Rupee, or not even Rupee, but it's like that. The first thing which
NFS,
NPCI did of debit card
correct, NFS,
interoperability.
correct. Or ATM into.
And this again, how would Sarvatra benefit from bill pay, the Bharat bill pay system?
Again, our job is to create platforms and give it to banks. So most of the cooperative banks want a bill payment system to give to their customers on in their mobile apps, on their branches, or on their website. So then they use our bill payment platform and they can do it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Uh, and this would reach the cooperative bank through your partnership with the software companies who provide them the core banking solution.
Not necessarily because this goes directly into their mobile banking app.
Okay. And so, what is the road ahead for Sarvatra? Like, are you planning additional fundraise? What next? Like.
So our, I would say, already there are huge number of platforms we are given to the banks, but still there is only hardly 10% of their customers who are actually using some platform or the other. and out of the rural customers, only probably 20% of them have a bank account. So actually, we are not even scratched the surface. So first is to try to get all customers of the bank to use the digital platforms that we are given, and then that catchment area around the branch, make all those who are not on any of the who are not customers of the bank, to try to make them customers of the bank by giving them products that appeal to them along with the banks. So that itself is a lifetime job.
So essentially, you're saying there's a large unbanked population, and there is a large population of people who have a bank account but are not using it digitally
So
properly.
correct. Correct. So there was two things. There was unbanked population and there was underbanked population. Underbanked is having a bank account but no facilities. So we defined financial inclusion as making the underbanked banked. Like example, if a customer of a ICICI bank in Nariman Point, what all the services he can avail because he's a customer of ICICI bank. Same services I wanted to give to a customer of a rural bank. So all those services available at his doorstep, at his affordability, at his level of connectivity, at the level of infrastructure available. That is that's the goal of Sarvatra. That's why the name Sarvatra, anywhere. So why we call ourselves Sarvatra is because of that. We want to make digital and banking available everywhere.
So, are you planning to acquire also some companies to increase the product portfolio and what all you're offering to your banks? Like, is that
Not
one of the
really.
ways, like acquisition as a way
No.
to?
No, because culturally it has to match. Because most of my people are with me for many years, and they're dedicated to the country. And if I don't know culturally how it will happen, so it's an extremely high level of technology we use. Cutting edge, bleeding edge technologies. So
But
we rather grow organically.
wouldn't it make sense for you to also get into core banking, because then you become a full stack
No,
service provider?
we launched our own core banking. We always had a core banking, but we never paid attention to that. But now the demand came from our banks that they want a web-based core banking, and that's when we realized that there was no good web-based core banking. So, with our expertise of platform as a service thing, we created one of the finest web-based CBS now, and we are piloting it in 10 banks, and then we'll expand it across the country as required. And we have partnered with Oracle Cloud for that. So Oracle Cloud is giving our CBS to some of the customers, but we are also going to expand into our own. So we have our own private cloud also, which is based on again Oracle technologies. So
So
we
the
are
current
expanding.
CBS tools are like based on, like, can be run only on Windows machines. Like, you need to download and install a software to run it. You can't just open a
Uh,
browser window and log in.
No, you can. There are lots of what you can say CBS which are web-based CBS. So web-based CBS are there, but we are a cloud-based CBS. So we are the first cloud CBS.
So, but
So
wouldn't a
web-based,
web-based CBS
web-based.
necessarily be cloud-based? Like,
No. See, web-based CBS means what? The data center is within the bank, and through browsers, all branches connect to that. Cloud is every browser is connecting directly to the centralized system, to the hosted in the cloud. So, example, your office mail is a web-based mail, but your Gmail is cloud-based mail.
okay, so
Like your
in a cloud-based CBS, then the bank doesn't need to have servers and maintain the databases. That
correct,
is
nothing,
maintained on the cloud by you.
correct.
Hmm. Okay. So it is even more convenient for a non-tech savvy bank to become digitized.
Or more than non-tech savvy, it is also always on infrastructure. In COVID, the banks realized that in this COVID lockdown, when branches were shut, head offices were shut, where people couldn't reach the branch, but their system was always on because it was with Sarvatra. It was hosted, there was never downtime. So, but there's CBS, for CBS, they had to go there, do a day end, and somewhere somebody had to go to the head office or all that. So, there's a huge demand for cloud now, cloud CBS. Like you use Zoom, or how we are now using. Instead of all my interviews no longer happen in person now, it's all online.
Yes.
And you're
yes,
using
yes.
some cloud software.
Yes.
All recordings, music recording. I'm an artist, musician myself.
Okay.
So I just recorded my album in last 2 years of lockdown. We did it all online.
What kind of music do you do?
I do. I used to do pop music, rock music. But this first time I tried Marathi Sugam Sangeet. So did that.
And your company is based in Pune only, like the
Yeah.
Hmm.
So
And what is your
nowadays, I don't know if my company is based in Pune. I think it's based at home because
right?
all my employees are across India, and many of them, 30% come from rural background. They are happily staying in the rural areas. So I wouldn't say we are based in Pune. We are headquartered in Pune.
Or you are a cloud company now, so to say.
We
Like
are
your
actually, we
office
are
is in the
actually
cloud.
correct. We are a cloud company.
So, do you think that will be permanent, or do you think once COVID subsides, you would ask people to come back to office?
So now I have asked people to come, but none of them are really interested in coming to office. They're so happy at home. But we have given them options. So I think most probably our office will become like a place where co-working space where if someone wants to come to office, they have to book and come. So that's what only probably management people will come and go, and sales guys anyway are always on the road. So I don't know.
So, a lot of
Only
entrepreneurs feel that they need people to be in the office to make them productive. How do you manage to make people productive without calling them to office?
quality, na. If you do quality work, you don't have to be productive. You don't have to give them work and make them work. If your work is of good quality, they will work, and you have to trust them. It should be really something that excites them. Then only they'll work. No? Otherwise, better they work only 4 hours and they're doing bad software.
Okay. So you're saying because of the fact that you chose to be a product company, not get into services, therefore your people are more excited to work, and you don't need to really.
No, we are a services company also, no, but we are services around our own product. So we create products and then we run a platform as a service. So if you see our revenue is all service based. We are no longer selling product, na? We are giving service around our own product.
Yeah, your transaction based revenue.
We are correct. So our 70% employees are in the service side of the business. Though it's our own product. We are not doing someone else's product. So we are a services company. But we do something really good, something exciting. We have the mission of doing digitizing the country, and we are happy with what we do.
This episode of Founder Thesis podcast is brought to you by Long Haul Ventures. Long Haul Ventures is the long haul partner for founders and startups that are building for the long haul. More about them is at www.longhaulventures.com.